Well, hello everyone. Welcome in. We're going to give it another minute or so and let other people get through the login process before we get started. So hang tight, we'll be starting shortly. We'll just give it another 30 seconds or so. I see lots of people logging in right here at the top of the hour.
So Andy, you're sitting in St. Louis. What's the weather like today?
It's probably mid to upper 70s here in the Midwest.
Nice fall weather then.
Yes, but it's a little too warm. I'm looking forward to when it gets cool again, but it won't be long.
Won't be long.
Well, it looks like we've got about a minute past, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, and hopefully everyone has gotten through the login okay. Thank you everyone for joining us. We are really excited to have you here today with us. We are going to be covering how with Sage Intact, how we can make your month-end close look a lot better than maybe it looks today. And I'll be your MC/host. My name is Andy Harlem, and I'm with CLA Clifton Larson Allen. I'm a director of the digital here. And most of the talking and driving today is going to be done by my friend Linda Pinion at Sage Intact, who is going to take us through the demo of the software and the closing process and that kind of thing. But before we get started, or before we get to that part of it, I should say, I want to take you through a couple other things. So first, I'm going to start right off the bat with the poll. We love to ask polls. And here we go. So in the chat, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Missy, oh, here it is, the poll's up. How long does your month-end close take? We have several options, as you can see. Don't be embarrassed to say, but I guess you can click that as an answer if it really is true. We'll let this poll stay up for a moment or two, and then we'll keep going.
So Andy, quick question for you. Were you ever part of the month-end close in any of your travels?
Yes, but that was back before software was invented, Linda, and we're doing it all in paper and pencil.
All right, we'll let you. Well, okay. So you take number 5. You're embarrassed to say. There you go.
So I am sorry. I don't. Do we have the poll results up? Can we see those? I don't know where to look for those online.
Looks like 57% are less than 15 days, 21% within 10 days, 14% 5 days or less, and then there's 7% over 20, and no one is embarrassed. Oh, good. No one's embarrassed. That's good. We don't want to embarrass anybody here today. So, well, thank you for participating in the poll. We're going to throw another one at you here later. So, again, I'm Andy Harleman with CLA, and my friend Linda is here with us. We can go to the next one. I want to talk about, first, just basic housekeeping. These webinars are set up where it's all the participants are muted, so we can't hear you if you have a question, and we would ask that if you have questions that you use the chat box and submit them, and we will take the questions at the end of the webinar. So don't hesitate to chat something or type something into the question box if it comes up along the way, and we'll get back to all those questions at the end. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. So if we want to move on to the next one, I want to talk a little bit about CLA so you understand the relationship here between CLA and Sage Intacct, and who are these CLA people that are on the phone with you today. So CLA is short for Clifton Larson Allen. We are, in another time, might have been known as a CPA firm, but today we are a professional services firm, and we are the 8th largest professional service firm in the United States. And we have been a partner with Sage Intacct for some time, but our whole mission here at CLA is to know our clients. We've built this practice on not by serving these multi-gazillion dollar clients, though I'm sure we have a few, but most of our clients are what I call Main Street size nonprofits and businesses. And our entire approach to how we do things is based on that human relationship. And it truly is an advantage for our clients because you can trust that CLA is going to do right by you because we want to preserve that relationship.
So specifically to Intact, I could move on to that, please. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to mention our nonprofit experience first. I came to CLA myself a couple of years ago after working in the nonprofit sector for most of my career. I started as an administrator for a nonprofit when I was right out of college. And then I moved on and I worked for a couple of software companies that worked only with nonprofits. So I knew CLA already. I used to see them at the conferences and the Intact events and the AICPA events. And on many of my customers were CLA clients for their audit and other things. So CLA has a very big footprint in the nonprofit space. Over 9,000 nonprofit organizations we serve from, and all types and kinds of nonprofits, as you can imagine. So we have that knowledge and that understanding and that background with nonprofit really serves us when we're helping our clients who are working with Sage Intacct. So if we could move to the next slide. We are what Sage Intacct calls a value-added reseller, but what that means essentially is Sage makes the really good software, and company like CLA, we help our clients implement it. Because as awesome and flexible and powerful and user-friendly as this system is, you still need to put a little thought into how it's configured, because it is so flexible. There are so many decision points about, oh, could I do it this way? The answer is yes. Could I do it that way? The answer is yes to that too. And what we have to do is figure out what's the best of those 2 yeses, or sometimes the best of those 5 or 6 or 7 yeses, to configure the best decision to make there. So that's what we do. And we've been doing this for quite some time, over 20 years. We've now implemented Sage Intacct over 2,000 times. We have lots of accolades, as you can see, but I think most importantly, what I want you to understand about it is that we know what we're doing. We've done this a lot. We now actually have over 60 Intacct consultants. I need to update this slide. And bottom line is we built, as I said, we built that relationship with our clients. And there are some really scary stats out there that you can find about failed implementations of software. CLA is not going to let you fail. We're going to hold your hand through this process, and we're going to draw upon our experience and our best practices to make sure that it goes astonishingly well. So we can move on to the next slide. The primary reason why people call us all the time and say, hey, I implemented Sage Intacct somewhere else, but I don't think it went well. Can you help us? Is because we start with the end in mind. We start by looking at your financial reports, for example, and we say, well, what do you need to report on out of the system? We sit down with you and your financial leadership and we talk about those things. We ask you how you do things now. Sometimes we push back. It's true consultation and it's kind of fun. Sometimes we say, hey, wait a second, why do you do it that way? Have you ever considered doing it this way? And sometimes we have those fun moments with our clients where they have those big aha moments of, yeah, I think there is a better way. And so that's what that process is about. It's about a lot of thinking through exactly how we should set the system up. Once you've decided that you agree with our recommendations on the setup, you sign off on that, then we go build it. Then we come back and we pull in your data and we train you and your staff. And we make sure we go through lots of test scripts, so in simulated environments, before we ever take you live. But then we deploy, we take you live. And you know what? Usually go live is a really anticlimactic day. People sometimes think ahead of time, that's going to be lightning bolts coming down from the sky on me on go live day. No, not really. Usually on go live, you wake up, you start cutting checks out of Sage Intacct. But during that first month, you might start, you're going to deal with your first bank reconciliation, or you're at the end of that month, your first month-end close. Linda, we're going to talk about that in a moment. And that's where CLA is going to help you through that first month of those processes after you're live on the system. So that's a big high-level overview of how we go about doing our implementations of Sage Intacct and how we serve our clients with that. So that's CLA. That's a little bit about how we do things, how we approach things. And now it is my great pleasure to turn it over to Linda. Linda is going to take you through this whole conversation about month end and what it looks like for you, but more importantly, what it could look like for you with an awesome system like Sage Intacct. So Linda, you asked me a question earlier, so I'm going to pivot back and ask you. How about you? Has it ever been part of your life to be involved in these month-end closes?
It was. So, Andy, I'll go back to one of my first jobs, actually was when I was still in high school. I worked part of the day and I went to school part of the day. It was a program called Cooperative Office Education. And so I went to school from 7:30 till 11, and then I went home and I had lunch, and then I went to work. And the company that I worked for was a company called Tandy Homes. And Tandy built prefab homes and also built commercial buildings, universities, and that sort of thing. And I got a lot of great experience there, but I was part of that month-end close process. And I remember distinctly, one of my tasks that I had to do at month end is I had to make sure that all of the closing journal entries had in fact been entered into the ledger and posted. And so I think back to that time and I think, we were using checklists way back when. We just didn't realize that we were, but that was really the beginnings of a checklist for month-end close. So yes, and then of course, as I went to other jobs, it got a little bit better and a little bit easier and more entailed. But yes, I have been part of month-end close. Yeah. And just thinking about that, I looked at this slide. I asked Missy to pull together a graphic for me, and month-end close can be a really hectic time. There can be a lot of activities going on and people looking for documents and trying to make sure that everything's in order. And maybe this is what your desk looks like. Maybe you're ready to, pull your hair out because you are part of this month-end close. We want to change that view for you today. We want to change the picture. So let's go ahead and talk about how we can do that. So first of all, good news, bad news. The bad news is month-end close comes every 30 days. So it's not something that's a one and done. And what we hear and we see, I know Andy's seen this and I've seen it from other nonprofits, is that, the process is becoming a little bit more complex because the compliance that needs to be met and the things that need to be sent in and documented and presented maybe to the board are a little bit more involved. And so we have to have that organization in place. There's more time-sensitive information that we are trying to gather and get together for that month-end close. So there's a little bit of pressure on us. And we want to make sure that that pressure is not causing us to make mistakes, because the integrity of the close is very important. Now, the good news is there are ways for you to really improve your processes, to accelerate the process. And most of that's done with technology and with automating and streamlining your processes. Next. So one of the things that we did at Sage Intacct, and we do this often, is we polled the audience, so to speak. We conducted a survey. And when we got the results of that survey, we found that 60% of organizations take over a week to close. So I can remember back just a few years ago when I was part of a close that we had to close within the first 5 days of the following month. I don't know if that's along the lines of what you're looking at today, but that's pretty fast. You've got to have everything really buttoned up pretty quickly in order to get all of that done in those first 5 days. And if you don't get it done, the question is, what's the impact of that? Because sometimes when you go through month-end close, you stop other processes. So work continues to kind of pile up behind you while you're trying to get the books closed. So what's the impact of that pileup? And, what are you doing on a manual type basis that's taking up all that time? Perhaps it's consolidating, perhaps it's reconciliations. I know Andy mentioned the bank reconciliation. So are you waiting till you get the information from the bank in order to start that reconciliation process? Now, the good news here is in the survey, we also learned that on average, organizations saved 36% of time just by moving away from spreadsheets. So I'm going to say that everyone on this call today is using Excel. That would be my bet. And if you're using Excel, more than likely, my experience is that you are a guru. You're very good at Excel. You know it, you can utilize it and execute all types of information. You can do pivot tables, so you're really good at it. However, we know there's some pitfalls with using those spreadsheets. So let's move to the next. And let's talk about what does it take to really create that strong back office, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a back office that, you know, has their act together, that knows that there's a lot of activity that needs to happen at month end and at year end, and you need to focus on how can you do more with either the same amount of resources and effort, or perhaps even with less. And we see this and hear this in nonprofits and in for-profit companies as well. People are wanting to know, how can I not need to add headcount and still accomplish what my goals are? So it's all about streamlining those processes, reducing the spreadsheets, utilizing automation, being ready all the time, whether that's tax ready or audit ready. Whenever something needs to have an activity posted against it, you have all the information at your fingertips and you're ready to go. So that may mean that you automate your expense tracking, perhaps your grant reporting, your time tracking, all with just the click of a button. Okay. So now I want to dig a little bit deeper into that spreadsheet question. What tools are you using for reporting today? Are you using Excel? Are you using third-party tools, a combination of tools, or maybe option 4, you're clueless? We'll give you a minute. And I'm going to bet that it is Excel will be the top metric here.
Too. You know, Linda, while we're waiting for that, I'll tell you, I used to make a joke that your average nonprofit finance person, God forbid if they lost their job today, could get a job tomorrow teaching people how to use Excel.
Yes. Yes, that is true. That is true. And I would also tell you that every time I hear, you know, the acronym NFP, I say NFP stands for nice, fun people. They're also smart people. They are very talented and very much in demand. So Missy, what was our result here?
35% use Excel spreadsheets, 5% third-party reporting tools, and 60% were a combination, and no one is clueless.
Okay, well, so we have people who are not clueless. That's very good. And we have people that are not embarrassed. So that's good too. So it doesn't surprise me about the Excel answer. It really doesn't surprise me about a combination of tools, because you're going to use whatever works for you. You're going to use sometimes what's always been used. So if you go into an organization and they've always done it a certain way, you're just going to adapt or adopt whatever way they've been doing it. So that doesn't surprise me that it's a combination. All right, great. Thank you. Now, one of the things that Andy said that I think is so on point today, he was talking about implementation and the methodology, if you remember that slide. And he said that he wanted to start with the end at the beginning. Keep that in your back pocket, because that is so true about what we're going to talk about and what we're going to see in Sage Intacct. First of all, I want to introduce you into something that may be a little bit different. When we started out today, the title of this was It's 2025. that seems like a long time away. It's not. We're approaching the end of 23 right now. So that's not that far away. The concept of having a continuous close is something that maybe you haven't really thought about. And what I want to challenge you with today is think about what you want at the end, and then we're going to start there. And at the end for us is visibility into the information. Now, that visibility may come in the representation of a dashboard, and that may be a new concept for you as well. So I'm going to share that with you in just a moment. It may be in a spreadsheet, it may be in a report, it may be in a graph, but there's some visibility element there of what do you want to be able to look at? What do you want to be able to access? So think about what you want in that view, and then we'll talk about how do we get there. So that's exactly where I'm going to start with my presentation. I'm going to start with the end at the beginning. So I'm going to show you visibility by way of a role-based dashboard, one that I've created for month end. And part of that role-based dashboard is a month-end checklist. Now, as Andy and I were talking earlier, you know, we started out with a checklist many years ago. We didn't really think about it being a checklist, but that's what it was. It was a list of tasks or activities that we needed to do, and perhaps in the order in which we needed to do them to make sure that we didn't miss anything. So that's our checks and balances. We're going to do the same thing in our month-end checklist in Sage Intacct. Now, as part of that visibility, there's a reason that we can pull it together and we can filter it and slice and dice it and present it in different ways. Part of that is because of the way our foundation is built. So when you build your chart of accounts, it's going to be a modern chart of accounts. It's going to be very easy for you to maintain. We're going to introduce you to something called dimensions, and dimensions are a way to tag transactions and tell the story of that transaction, and then be able to filter and report at that dimensional level. We're also going to talk to you about bringing in non-financial data. Wow, wouldn't that be cool to be able to bring in data around the number of parishioners that you have or members, to look at your volunteer hours, the number of meals that you served. Those types of pieces of information, we're going to marry that together with financial information to give you a different view of what your organization looks like and how it's tracking. And then we're also going to introduce you to something called Collaborate, and that's a way for you to have a collaboration within the software with other Sage Intacct users. Now, there's a section here that's called optimization. So how do you make this close better, faster, more efficient? And how do you get to this continuous close? Well, along the way, we have outlined some activities that are kind of mundane. They're things that you're going to do every month. So we want to make them faster and more efficient, and we're going to use technology to do that. In fact, we're going to introduce AI, artificial intelligence here, and that's going to help us with things like our bank reconciliation, with matching rules. It's going to help us with allocations. It's also going to help us perhaps with our journal entries and approving journal entries and understanding where we have something called an outlier. So those are some of the things that we are going to introduce so that you're not waiting till the midnight hour to start working on this close, that you are continuously closing throughout the entire month so that it's faster and it's more efficient. So what I want to do now is I'm going to turn off my camera for bandwidth, and I'm going to ask Missy to give me permission to share my screen. All right. And Missy, if you could just validate, or Andy, if you could validate that you can see my screen okay.
Yeah.
I see it and it looks fantastic.
Right answer, Andy. Thank you so much. All right, so for those of you who have not ever seen Sage Intacct, let me introduce you to what we call a role-based dashboard. Now, the way that I got here, very simple. I logged in. I am happen to be using Firefox. I could use Firefox. I could use Chrome, any browser. I'm logged in. I happen to be sitting close to Portland, Maine today, so I'm in my home office. And I logged in as Carla Grace, and she is the controller. And Carla is a super user. She has access to pretty much go everywhere. Behind the scenes, those permissions allow me to restrict users to specific reports and also to specific applications, and then activities and tasks within those applications. So not everyone needs to be in general ledger. Not everyone needs to be able to enter journal entries. So those activities can be permissioned. This particular dashboard that I've landed on is a month-end close dashboard. I do have access as Carla to many dashboards. So you can see in this drop-down list, these are all other role-based dashboards that I have permission to access. And they're very targeted. So in your organization, you may have people that are considered department managers, department heads. You may have program managers. You may have a board member. You may even want to set up one of these dashboards for your audit team. So keep that in mind, because we found that that's a big time saver when it comes to year-end audits, to have a dashboard set up for the auditors, and that allows them to self-service and to get that information themselves. So on these dashboards, month-end dashboard or any of the other dashboards, you control what information you want on that dashboard. And it's very easy for you as the business user to define and design what you want a dashboard to look like. Now, on this particular month-end dashboard, I have included that all-important checklist. So what I've done is I've set up the checklist, and then I've added tasks or activities to it, and I've assigned those to individual people. Now, when they get assigned an activity, workflow kicks off, sends them an email, lets them know that they have in fact been assigned a task for a specific activity with some due dates, etc. So they know, they are aware that they are responsible. You can have different types of checklists. They don't have to be a month-end checklist. You can use the checklist function for anything you choose to. I also have added some reports. I've added a trial balance. I've added a general ledger here. These are reports that are ones that are standard on-demand reports. I can execute them anytime I choose to. When I execute these reports, it allows me to see that information and to be able to view it right on my screen. So I don't have to dig in a filing cabinet. I can actually come in and drill into details. So anything in blue that you see here is something that I can drill down to the source transaction. So that's giving me the ability to empower users to have information at their fingertips. They don't have to wait for me to dig that out for them. These reports, again, are ones that you can execute anytime you choose to. You can print them, you can view them, you can even export them out to Excel if you chose to. In addition to that, there's a couple of activities down here. One is approving journal entries, so that's quick to have right here on the dashboard. There's also an allocation journal here that I have put on this month-end dashboard. And again, this is something that I do at month-end, and I'd like to have it here in this container of a dashboard, so I don't have to hunt around for anything. I can just go right to this one dashboard and get this report. Now, I mentioned something called Collaborate, and Collaborate is a way for me to reach out to other Sage Intacct users and self-document transactions. So let's kind of walk through that so you can see the power here and why this could be helpful for your month-end processing. So this is the conversation between Carla, my controller, and Trent Hayes. Trent happens to be Carla's manager. I know that. However, they're talking about an AP bill. So what Collaborate allows you to do is at the transaction level. So what I've done is I've moved right in to that transaction. I hyperlinked right into it. This is an AP bill from Costco where I went out and bought some postage. I can have an attachment over here, so I can have a picture of that transaction. And I can see here how it was coded. So I can see how it was coded in the general ledger to postage and shipping. But what I also see is that conversation between Carla and Trent. Now, I had a question about this. So old school, I would have gotten up and gone to someone's cubicle. Well, that doesn't happen real often today because a lot of us are remote. I could have called someone. I could have sent them a text or an email. However, by doing this at the transaction level, I have this recorded historically. So now, 3 weeks from now, when I'm looking at this transaction and I don't remember what happened, I'll have this conversation documented. I know that it was a conversation between Carla and Trent, and I know when that conversation happened. Now, it's very easy to enter in any information here. I can do that just by identifying who I want to enter the information to. And basically, it's just going to allow me to enter a conversation to a person or a group and then click share. And when I do that, they're going to get an email, but they're also going to get notification in the system that they have a message and something that they need to attend to. So in this collaboration feed, I will see everything that comes to me and everything that I need to take action on. And then I can respond back, and that, of course, will be documented here in this listing. So when you think about Collaborate and you think about being able to reach out and communicate and document at the same time, how often do you do that at month end? That could be a very important way for you to start those communications about specific transactions. So coming back to our dashboard, one other thing that I think is really helpful is I know when you close out the month, you're typically closing your subsystems first, and then you close out the ledger. So keeping track of what's been closed and what hasn't been closed is what you see here in this close through summary. So this tells me by application what has been closed and what it's been closed through. Now, all of this information on this dashboard is allowing you to containerize what's important for month-end close. Again, you may see other things here that spark your interest in having those types of dashboards, because this is a great way for you to have that quick business insight. You can see all of the activity here on the controller's dashboard. You might also want to look at some of that metric or outcome data. So I talked a little bit about church metrics when we talked about parishioners or members. So here is some of that operational data that I was talking about, in combining this with financial data. So this is done via statistical accounts. Very easy for you to do. Pull this information in from other applications if that's where it's housed, and bring it right here into these dashboards so that you have clear visibility of what's happening within your organization. So visibility starts with dashboards, real-time, up-to-date information, and we've incorporated those checklists. One of the other things that I talked about was having that streamlined chart of accounts. And this is an example of what your chart can look like. For some of you, you may be using a segmented chart, which means that you have the base account number and then you have some other numbers out to the side of this, maybe separated with a dash. Those numbers are important to you because they mean something. They may mean a particular grant or project. They may mean a location, a fund, possibly a department. We don't use a segmented chart. All we need is your natural or base account to create your chart. We've seen nonprofits go from 3,000 accounts in their chart down to 300 because of the new modern format that we use. And you might be thinking, well, that's great, but how do I get the detail that's in those segments? We do that with the concept that I mentioned called dimensions. And dimensions here, starting with restrictions all the way down to sites, these are dimensions that I have active in my presentation environment. So you see things like funds and projects or grants. You see vendors, you see customers and departments, restrictions. So you see that you have the ability to give the detail of the transaction and to tag that transaction to one or more of these dimensions. That's what gives us the ability to filter on our reports and to slice and dice the data. So dimensions are a key piece of that foundation that may be a different concept for you. Very powerful. You'll use this in your data entry, in keying your transactions, and you will absolutely use it in order to create those granular reports that you need. Now, there's some other things that are going to help you specifically at month end improve and speed up the process. So let's move to looking at, journal entries as an example. How many journal entries do you do in a month? Well, some organizations are very heavy into journal entries because they're journaling information in from other applications that they're using. Perhaps you outsource for payroll and you have that payroll journal entry, which is kind of a standard journal entry. Perhaps you have depreciation journal entries that you're entering. Our journal entry screen allows you to do all types of journal entries and to post those journal entries into multiple journals. So you can see I choose the journal that I want to post into, and then I have the ability to do just what I call a plain old journal entry, or I can do a reversing journal entry along with a recurring journal entry. So if I can set up journal entries to automatically reverse or to automatically occur, that's going to save me some time. I can also do journal entries cross funds, so I can go across my entities or funds. And so this allows me to really save time with data entry. I don't have to log in, log out. I can cross over and I can have those due tos and due froms created for me. So journal entries is a great part of a month-end close. What's also part of the month-end close sometimes is approving those journal entries. And that's all set up for you in Sage Intacct, so you can use the approval processes. But what happens when you have something that you approve and it gets posted and then you realize that there's a mistake? So you have to go back and you have to fix it. You have to do a little bit more work. So by utilizing artificial intelligence, we identify any patterns in the data that look abnormal. And we do this before the entry gets posted. So you have a chance before you approve it to see if there's anything that looks a little unusual that you want to go in and look at and possibly correct before you approve it and post it. We call those outliers. So this is an example of an outlier. I pulled in a payroll journal, and when I pulled that in, it's noted that there's a coding problem. And it's giving me this outlier notification here. So I can correct this before it gets posted, which is ultimately going to save me a lot of time. So we call that GL outlier. It's done with artificial intelligence and machine learning. So we're looking at the patterns in the data. There's another thing that you do at month end, and that's bank reconciliations. And I, for one, have never been a fan of doing bank recs. One of my first jobs in an accounting office was 20 bank reconciliations every month. So I got a lot of experience doing bank recs. What we do to help speed that process up is we take advantage of the Sage Banking Cloud. Now, what does that mean to you? It means that your bank is online with Sage Intacct. We bring those transactions in from the bank every 4 hours. So you technically could do a bank reconciliation every day if you chose to. Now, I personally would not want to, but you could. Most people will use this so that they can create and do a reconciliation every week. And then the last week of the month, they're only reconciling just a few transactions instead of starting from the beginning of the bank reconciliation period. So that's going to improve and speed up that process. In addition to us bringing those transactions in and bringing them in fast, we're also going to speed up that process, because when you go through and do your bank reconciliation, you're going to set up matching rules. So when the bank transactions come in, the matching rules will match everything that it can. Let's just say you want to match on the document number, the date, and the amount. So you'll have all those transactions matched automatically. And then what you're left with is just what's left over, what I call the bones, whatever you need to go in and do some more research on. As you do this bank reconciliation, we provide on the bank rec screen the ability to make any journal entries, anything that you need to maybe adjust. Maybe it's an interest or a bank charge. So now you don't have to get out of bank rec to do that journal entry. We've connected it right here to the bank reconciliation screen. And then when you're finished and you're all done, we provide you with reconciliation histories. So we've got the reports for you. We've got the reconciliation report and the outstanding items report. So this is going to speed up that whole month-end process of bank reconciliation. The last thing that we do is allocations. And allocations can be done a couple of different ways. In Sage Intacct, you can do a transaction allocation. As an example, you might have a bill, an AP bill that comes in, and you want to spread the love, so to speak. So you know that when you get that marketing bill, you're going to spread that across departments by a percentage or perhaps by a flat amount. So you're going to set up a rule, a transaction allocation rule, and you're going to apply that rule. And this is how you're going to apply it. You're going to say a percentage goes to each department and fund. So when you key in that AP bill for that marketing bill, it's going to automatically do the math for you. You'll only need to key it in one time and post it, and we will take care of distributing it or allocating it appropriately based on your rule. That's called a transaction allocation. Now, some of you may say, well, that's not exactly how we do allocations. We do allocations a little bit differently. We do them at the end of the month. We take whatever is in an account and we allocate it based on some other factor. So here we've got what we call a dynamic allocation, and that allocation is something that is a little bit more advanced. But in this case, I'm going to share with you an entry for employee fringe. So based on the rule that I've set up, at the end of the month, I'm going to take everything out of my source and I'm going to reallocate it based on this rule. And in this case, it's based on salary. So this is a way for you to automate this without having to do any spreadsheets or calculations. You can set these up and they will run and create the journal entries automatically at month end. So as we looked at some of these more tactical things like allocations, like doing that bank rec, those are things that you're going to do every month, and they're pretty straightforward. But all of this leads us to really, how do we do that reporting that we need? And the reporting that we need is both financial and could be from our subsystems as well. So here we have a full report center, and this report center is what's going to allow you to create reports and define what type of a report it is and who the audience is. So when you think about reporting at month end, perhaps your audience is your board member or your finance team. When you think about reports at year end, perhaps it's more geared toward auditors. So enabling you to filter and sort and pull these reports together based on who the audience is, or based on the type of report that is. You can see that I have reports here that are metrics versus reports that are closing reports. So when I look at all of this information, this is a way for me to really see both operational and financial data together. Now, when I have these reports pulled together, you'll notice that I can view that report in an HTML format. I can also push it out to a CSV file. I can send it out to a pretty PDF document. I can even export it to Excel. But what I want to focus on here is what's going to happen to you at month end. You're going to have a lot of reports that you're going to need to get out to a group of people. So utilizing the Sage Intacct Scheduler, you'll be able to group reports together, give them a schedule with a start and end date and a frequency and a delivery list. So when your board members need to get that packet of reports, no one has to sit and run reports and attach them to emails and send them out. The Sage Intacct Scheduler will do all of that in the background, and it will scoop them up unattended and send them out to your board members. So coming back to the dashboard, let me just do a quick wrap here before we move back to our slide presentation. When you think about month-end close, what's one of the most important things that you want? You want good, timely, accurate information. You want it organized and you want it contained. You want everyone to know what their role is, what their job is, what they're responsible for. The easiest and fastest way that you can do that is to create a role-based dashboard. And within that dashboard, think of it as a container. Within that dashboard, capture that checklist. So identify everything that needs to be done, assign those tasks, use that as your check and balance to make sure that you don't forget anything. And then keep track of where you are in the process. Keep track of what's been closed and what hasn't. Have those reports at your fingertips here so that if you need to access them quickly, they're right here on this dashboard. Utilize Sage Intacct Collaborate to communicate and document at the transaction level what you're doing and how you're doing it. Utilize approvals so that you know that the transactions have gone through the right process before they've been posted and put into the ledger. So Missy, that's what I had to cover in product today. If we could go back to our slides, that would be great. All right. So as we do our summary here of our presentation today, I introduced you to something called continuous close. So continuous close now should mean that we're going to provide you some tools and technology so that you're not waiting till the last minute. you're continuously closing and checking and making sure that things are getting done as the month is rolling along. The whole goal here is to make sure that you're ready, whether you're ready to close the books, you're ready to close out the year, you're ready for the auditors to come, you're, ready for the next assignment that you need to go to or the next project that you need to work on because you have everything in order. And as you saw today, technology is going to be your friend. It's really going to help you be better, faster at what you're doing. It's going to help you be more strategic, and it's going to speed up those tactical processes. You can't be accountable if you can't see it. So we want to make sure that visibility is at the forefront.
Well, thanks, Linda.
Absolutely. We've got one more poll, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So if you would like for someone to chat with you now, we are anxious to do that. The CLA team would love to have a discussion with you. If you think you might be ready in a month or so, want to get that on the calendar, get that set up with the CLA team, that would be great as well. Or perhaps you're just here to learn today, and we're happy that you came and that you learned. We trust that you are going to walk away with some nuggets today that you can share with your team. So Missy, what does it look like?
Looks like we've got a lot of people here to learn and some that will be ready to talk soon.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to open it up now to any questions that we might have. Anything in the chat that we need to address, Andy?
I don't think I can see the chat.
No, I don't see anything in the chat, but if you do have questions, you can submit them.
So while we're waiting for any questions to come in, Andy, I'm going to ask a couple of questions that I know you and I have heard before. How long does it take? Let's just say that we pull the trigger today and we're ready to move forward with a new solution, Sage Intacct. How long does the implementation usually take?
I'd say to be safe, I'll say 4 months from when you sign until you're live. And that's not to say, and I want to be real clear here, it's not because you're working on this for 4 months straight. It's because we try to spread it out, if for no other reason than for your own sanity, because you have a full-time job already. And so we try to spread this out so that we are not putting too much of a burden on you, and we can have you, add a few hours a week to your life through a couple of months. So I would say the safest thing to do would be, if you're thinking about changing systems, again, I said something about starting with the end in mind earlier. Let that be our theme here. Start with your go live in mind and back up from there and say, well, 4 months sooner than that, I ought to have a contract signed, which means you need to build in time before that to evaluate the system, to look at demos, to talk to other people, et cetera, whatever you need to do for your own due diligence to feel like you're comfortable and able to make a decision by that time. Now, I give you that figure of 4 months, and that's assuming your prototypical organization with prototypical complexity. If you have additional complexity, such as international nonprofit with multi-currency and consolidating of dozens of entities, those might add a little time. So you probably, if you have more complexity, you might want to build 6 months into your game plan.
Okay, that's fair. And no one will be upset if you give them a 4-month time frame and they get it done faster in 3 months. No one would be upset about that. So that's great. So one of the things that people will ask sometimes is, how do I learn this product? So how do I get ramped on this? Is this going to be really painful and hard for me to learn? I know sometimes it's hard as an adult to embrace change. When you're used to doing something and you feel comfortable and you're all knowing in your role, and then someone says, oh, we're going to change systems, that can be a little bit scary. And I learned not too long ago that the only thing that wanted change was a wet baby. So when you think about that, that's probably true. So I would just tell you that there are so many ways for you to learn in this product. So let me just hit a few of those. First of all, when you're in product, you can reach into the help. You can get help on a specific page. And it's not just simple help. It's full-blown documentation with examples and hyperlinks to other topics that are related. Sometimes there's even a video that you can see how to do something. We
Hey, Linda,
also,
you know what I like to say on that topic? Unlike some software that I've used in my lifetime, we actually have helpful help.
we do have helpful help. We do. And the other thing that we've started embedding is something called tours. And so let's just say you're in accounts payable and it's been a long time since you've figured out how to pay bills. You just don't remember. You did it several months ago, you don't remember. Now we have something called a walkthrough, and it walks you through step by step and guides you on how to do that particular process. Another way is to take classes through Sage University, and some of those are self-service, they're, you know, on your own. Others are instructor-led. And then utilize CLA, because they're going to be an education resource for you as well. So when you pull all that together, you've got a lot of ways to learn the product and a lot of ways to get ramped very quickly.
Linda, I'll say to that, a major part of our implementation, I talked today about the define phase and how important that is that user training. That's also what we do here at CLA. Instructor-led, classroom style user training. Nowadays we do it on Teams. You know, in the old days we used to come out and be with you there in your room. We still can, but we will work with you in that with that personal touch. That being said, there are so many great technology tools, and we have to recognize that all of our users have different learning styles and are different generations. Yep. You know, us old folks like me, we kind of like talking to human beings, but you might have a 22-year-old accountant who grew up with a phone in their hand who likes to just do self-service videos, and that's okay too. We have lots of different ways for you to learn and for the different people in your organization to learn.
That's
Linda. Before we run out of time, we do have 2 questions that were submitted.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so the first one is the solution a package between CLA and Sage Intacct?
So what it is you would, the analogy I would use is to construction. When you build a new house, you don't go to the building materials store, you go to a contractor. So that would be CLA, right? And so the building materials would be the software. So through CLA, we are able to help you both, you know, contract for your subscription and any services that we provide you to help you along the way. And I don't want to get too complicated with it, but you have a subscription agreement between you and Sage, and then you'll have a services agreement between you and CLA. It all goes through CLA, but let's say in some terrible universe where you just decide you don't like CLA anymore, it doesn't happen, but I'm just saying, then you still have a subscription agreement with Sage Intacct, even if you terminated your agreement with CLA, which would never happen, as I said. But my point is, it's sort of both, but through CLA. And what's the second question, Missy?
The second question is, does anyone have experience using the checklist and Intacct as documentation of controls/workflow at year-end for auditors? If so, was it acceptable documentation for them?
You know, Linda, I don't know if you or I can really talk about that too much and without getting into specific client examples, but I would say that reminds me of the great resource of the Sage Intacct community, where we have literally all thousands and thousands of Sage users can get to the community and ask each other questions like that. But certainly if you have questions like that as a non-user so far, since you're maybe just considering being a Sage Intacct user, we would be happy to connect you with references and other users who can speak to that.
And I would just tell you,
all day long, but ask a user.
Yeah, and I would just tell you, we have one of our solution consultants, longtime NFP person, built out a sample checklist of what he was used to having put together for an auditor. So we have a sample that you could look at. Has it been blessed by, PwC or Deloitte? No, it hasn't, but it would give you a good idea of someone who's used it in practical experience. All right. Any more questions, Missy?
No, that's it.
Okay. Well, on behalf of CLA and Sage Intact, Andy and I thank you so much for being here today, riding along with us. We trust that you took some nuggets that you can chew on a little bit and get back to CLA, set up an appointment, have that conversation. I know Andy and his team would enjoy visiting with you and sharing NFP knowledge. Andy, anything you want to say for closing?
I just want to also express my gratitude to each and every one of you for being here today. Thank you so much.
I hope y'all have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
Take care.